Hello, everyone. Hopefully, my audio is coming in fine. Please tell me if it is and or isn't. I really am hoping that it is coming in fine. Uh, yes. I think the music's up a little too loud. I think that's good. Music's roughly right there, judging by the levels. I need to be told, though, how wonderful these levels are and if they are fine or not. Told, though, how wonderful these. Sorry, I was just listening to some playback. So I'm like really into electro sax music. I didn't think I would be, but now I am, and I have to thank my friend Chucky, the best friend I ever had, for introducing me to this kind of music. And electro swing, I'm okay with electro swing. Antonio, the co-host of Fat Man and Little Boy, really got me into that as well. Though I have to say I prefer my electro swing. Now, it's really funny because I kind of remember way back in my high school days, or even in my late middle school days, really, when dubstep was a thing. Remember that? Dubstep? Yeah, that fucking died pretty quickly, didn't it? Dubstep was something I was really into, and it was just really funny how quickly I grew out of dubstep. It was a fad that I was like really into, and then it just died a painful death, and I don't really miss it because as far as I was concerned, dubstep sort of became nothing but literal, flushing of toilet sounds, which I never really compared to. I never really would have compared that to before, but the more I look back on it, yeah, it was. Now, something that I have not grown out of, to this day, ever since I got introduced to it when I was a freshman in college, is synthwave. I still really enjoy synthwave. In fact, to the point that I've incorporated it into a lot of my work, including FM 132.9. Composer John S. Weekly, he did the music for FM 132.9, John S. Weekly. I specifically gave him a bunch of John Carpenter scores to basically look at and say, kind of mimic this for FM 132.9. He absolutely nailed it, which the soundtrack, by the way, is available for you to listen to FM 132.9 on his YouTube channel, along with, I'm not sure if it's his Spotify or not, but I know it's on his website. You can also find him on Facebook, John S. Weekly Music, and he does a lot of music for stuff here at ANP. He's done several tracks to our upcoming web series, Antonio, Adam, and Lucas. Some sort of jazzy themes. He's really adverse. I like them. I like working with him a lot. Hopefully we'll work with him more in the future. Would you consider doing more audio commentaries in the future? Yeah, I've been really tempted to do audio commentaries in the future. I wanted to do one for specifically Godzilla vs. Hedorah, because I've been doing, just on the side, a buttload of research on it. And that's something that I would like to do. I would like to do a very detailed, penned-out, David Callett-esque audio commentary for that film, because I think the making of Godzilla vs. Hedorah is as interesting, if not more interesting, than the film itself. And knowing how much I love that movie, I think that's saying a lot. boy. I was hoping some more people would have joined by now, but I guess not. That's fine. That's fine, I suppose. Not really. Oh well. So a lot's been going on at ANP. One of the missions that I've been trying to do with these live streams is I've been wanting to do these usually the first weekend, the first Saturday of every month. I want to do one of these sort of live streams where I talk for about 2 hours with you guys and everything like that. Because what a lot of people don't know is I work very heavily in the live streaming business now. that's my primary job, you know, outside of ANP, which hopefully one day ANP will become my primary job. But the way how things are going right now, it will be. But live streaming has introduced me to a whole new world of getting content out there. And one of the things that I've noticed with live streaming is it genuinely makes you seem more approachable. From a selfish standpoint, it makes you look more approachable as a content creator. You can directly interact with your fans or your subscribers or people who are just happen to be stumbling by, but that's what they really are. And I want that. For a while there, I was doing that, you know, with the old SOS crew, with, you know, when Geeks for Geeks had its own thing before I screwed that up, you know. You know, I had something like this going. I was doing a live stream every other week, it seemed like, but then it just died because it was just me. But now that I've got all this technology at hand now, and I've learned how to use it and how to properly stream, how to properly encode and everything like that, you know, I was basically getting paid to go back to school. This has opened up a whole new world to me, and I plan on tackling it with both fists. Which goes into ANP's partnership with ITN. ITN is the Insurance Television Network, and we've been hired as their sole content creator. They tell us what to make, we shoot it, we edit it, we post it. And a lot of it is actual, or it's going to become live streaming, where people have presentations and stuff like that. And it's particularly for the... Oh, Kaiju Noir. Oh, there's an asshole I haven't talked to for a long time. Nor do I really care. Oh well. I'm still going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. I don't really care about him. He clearly doesn't care about me. And that's just fine. Alright, so one of the things that I'm going to bring up right now is Merry Christmas, everybody. Yes, I'm going to say Merry Christmas. I don't care what you are, whatever. If you don't celebrate Christmas, happy whatever holiday it is you celebrate. But Merry Christmas. And one of the things that I've always done as... I'm not going to get into that, Martin. One of the things that I always do around Christmas is watch Son of Godzilla. That is one of my default go-to Christmas films, even though it has nothing to do with Christmas. The closest thing that you get to with Son of Godzilla and it being Christmassy is the fact that there is snow on the ground. And... Or, you know, towards the end of the film, of course, their experiment works and everything like that. Blah, 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 blah. Well, that really got me thinking. You know, I did a video a long time ago talking about Shinichi Sekizawa, who was one of the two main writers for Toho. He was one of the two main writers for specifically their giant monster flicks, their sci-fi flicks. And I remember doing that. I did that on Takashi Kimura and Shinichi Sekizawa, which those were the two peeps. And I remember in those videos that I specifically said that Takashi Kimura was my favorite of the two writers, despite the fact that I would not have liked working with him. And that's a whole other can of worms that I don't really want to get into right now. But I have since changed my opinion on that, and I've gone on record as saying this, but Shinichi Sekizawa not only has become my favorite of the two writers of, you know, the classic kaiju genres over at Toho, those films over at Toho, but one of, if not my favorite writer of all time, and not so much that he's made my favorite films of all time, more the fact that he's just got the right mentality when it comes to writing, because this is a man that just absolutely loved his job. And unlike Honda and, you know, a lot of those people that fought in the war, it's really funny how he was the only one that said, nope, I'm going to celebrate life now. I'm going to celebrate the life that I have and love what I do and love myself and love my life. He was the only one that, sure, what he saw was absolutely terrible and everything like that, but he was the only one to not let that negatively affect him. And as somebody who has not witnessed any of that, of course, I've read a lot about it, I've seen a lot of the footage and everything like that, but that's nothing. That's not experiencing it, and I would never even dare compare the two. But he's the only one out of that entire group to come out with a positive outlook on life. And I think that's a testament to Shinichi Sekizawa as a person. Now, what I was going to bring up was that it's very clear that he liked working with Jun Fukuda more than he enjoyed working with Ishiro Honda. Just in the way how the films play out. Because if you compare the works of Ishiro Honda, where Shinichi Sekizawa was the main writer for. So like Mothra, I'm gonna think of the three main ones in terms of the Godzilla series that we know that those two work together, and that was Mothra vs. Godzilla, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and Invasion of Astro Monster, aka Monster Zero. And then at the same time, you watch like Secret of the Telegion, directed by Jun Fukuda. You watch Son of Godzilla, and even Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, aka Ebirah Horror of the Deep. And it's quite clear that there's something in Sekizawa's writing and the direction of Jun Fukuda that clicked. And I think it was because both men liked to write action. You know, Jun Fukuda liked to shape a lot of his films around action, around perhaps a chase, perhaps around where the characters themselves are the focus, not so much of the scenario. And I think that is also where Shinichi Sekizawa really shined. Because if you look at simply the directing of Godzilla, Son of Godzilla, it's outstanding how lively it is. And I mean that in every way, shape, and form, just how lively the directing is. And I really started noticing it when Kamanga starts combating, Minya and Papa Godzilla, Papa Goji, and it's intercutting so much between, those in the cave, those making sure that the balloons are going up well, and that's all intercut, mixed with Masaru Sato's amazing score. And Masaru Sato's score perfectly fits the Jun Fukuda style. And we see that with all of the films the Godzilla films he composed, which if you look at them, they basically were all Jun Fukuda films. I know, Godzilla Raids Again, but whatever. So Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, Son of Godzilla, and Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. And all of them, the soundtrack beautifully fits the style of that particular film. Now, unlike Ifukube, Masaru Sato never had a specific he never had a specific theme for his Godzillas, but that doesn't matter to me because each one of his scores perfectly fit the tonality of the film. For example, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, the original, the one made in 1974, that score is so lively and so jazzy, it totally fits how fun and ridiculous that film is. And yet, if you look over to his score in Son of Godzilla, I don't care about Kaiju Noir. I do not care. Please, I would appreciate it if you kept your chats to this. I just do not care. Anyways, I'm actually going to switch that. There we go. Totally lost my train of thoughts. Thanks, Martin. Ah, yes. The music to Son of Godzilla. If you look at that film, it has a lot of heart to it. And that is very much so what I think genuinely makes that film a great film. not just a good film. A genuinely great film is the amount of heart that is in it, and the music lends itself to that because it fits the tonality. It's cute when it needs to be cute. For example, Minya jumping over Godzilla's tail and everything like that. Or one of the ones that I really noticed is like when Psycho and Akira Kubo's character are telling Minya to go away while they're setting up the radio antenna. I noticed that when Minya turns around, he kicks the rock. Like, he's like, God damn it, and he kicks it. And I'm like, that's hysterical, and I love that so much. Part of the reason why I love these films so much. Hi, Game Controller Network. That's Antonio, everybody. Or it might be Antonio, I don't know. There's multiple people that run that channel, though I'm pretty sure it's Antonio. Since Antonio is the key to all of this. Antonio and I are going to have a baby, by the way. You'll be seeing our baby in... Yeah, I knew it. But Antonio and I had a baby, and you'll be seeing our baby in future episodes of Fat Man and Little Boy. But I've always enjoyed Son of Godzilla on a level because it also, to me, just sort of fits the whole holiday spirit. I finally revealed your pregnancy, Antonio. I finally revealed your pregnancy. But Son of Godzilla is such a cute film. And a part of that goes into the very ending, where it's like Godzilla is just shitting all over Minya. It's like, why the fuck do I have to take care of this retarded baby? And Minya's like the most innocent thing ever. And yes, I think Minya is cute within that film. In Godzilla's Revenge, I think he's terrifying, but in Son of Godzilla, I think he's cute. And I just love the fact that, despite the fact that Godzilla, beats him with his tail, steps on his tail so Minya can breathe his atomic breath properly. And I also love how Minya is, like, desperately trying to use his atomic breath after that, but it's just like he can't until the very end, and I love it, and it's so cute. And again, that's something that Sekizawa, going back to what I was saying at the beginning, Sekizawa prided himself on, was giving our monsters a bunch of character that we just don't get we never got in Hollywood films of the same caliber around this time period. Sekizawa's main purpose, and Eiji Tsuburaya loved this, by the way, was incorporating more and more human characteristics in with his monsters, thus giving them more character. And I agree with that. Like, look at Sekizawa's script for Varan the Unbelievable, even Aegon, that television miniseries, which is awful, by the way. And there's no question. You can see what direction he was going with as his career progressed, and he loved it because it was fun. And you see, the key with Sekizawa is, and again, I'm going to do another podcast on this, I think, sort of updating it. The key with Sekizawa was he inverted the genre. And I can... Son of Godzilla is this to a T. Is this mentality to a T. He inverted the genre, because normally when you have, a movie with a giant monster, or basically anything sci-fi related in general, usually the monster is the problem, or the scenario is the problem, and our human protagonists are the ones that fix it. By inverting it, Shinichi Sekizawa said, our humans have a problem, and our monsters resolve it. And to me, that is the most brilliant thing to come out of Toho, to come out of Japan, to come out of his writing, was that mentality. Because that is truly what separated the Japanese style of making their giant monster movies and the American way, or even just the foreign way. Like look at Gorgo, for example. Reptilicus. That's your typical monster plot. The monster is the problem, and our humans have to resolve it in some way. Yet you go over to Japan, and I think his magnum opus, he doesn't consider... I don't think Sekizawa ever considered this his magnum opus, but I consider it his magnum opus, because this is where he really tested out this inversion of the genre, Look at Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster. You know, you have Shindo protecting the princess from all these assassins, and not once but twice the monsters save her. Even though they're happening over on their own front. Once was when they were going to electrocute her. It just happens that Rodan dropped Godzilla on the power lines, so therefore she couldn't get electrocuted. And then, of course, the final confrontation between Shindo and Malnus the assassin. The reason why Shindo manages to save the princess is because Ghidra just happened to blast his lightning, causing an explosion on the mountain, creating a rock slide. Therefore, our humans have a problem, Shindo having to protect the princess, and the assassins trying to kill the princess, and the monsters have resolved it. And while a lot of people say that's sort of a split, you know, it sort of splits the monster action with that of the human action, and I certainly see that in Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster. As the writing progressed, from 1964 until basically Shinichi Sekizawa's retirement from films anyways in 1974, so a decade later, you'd see him really perfect this craft. Now, I'm going to jump to Son of Godzilla, because that's what we talked about. And Son of Godzilla was released in 1967. And what Shinichi Sekizawa did there goes into that same sort of inversion of the genre. So, what's going on with the humans, right? And especially in the last act of the film. Well, they're trapped on the island, and now Kumanga, the giant spider, is alive and spinning a web around their base, which is inside that cave, and they're like, how the fuck are we going to get out of this shit? And who comes along? Who happens to stumble along the way? Minya. So Minya and the giant spider get in a fight. Then Godzilla comes, and that diverges, you know, the spider from the cave, which allows our humans to commence the experiment to get off the island, even to radio out, really, even though they go through the cave, but to radio out to reach a UN submarine to get them out of harm's way, to get them off of that godforsaken island. And even that's intertwined, because Akira Kubo's character in Psycho, the woman, when they go outside, that attracts Minya. And Minya's like, oh, hi, because Psycho was always friendly to Minya. And then all of a sudden, when they go away, Minya's all pouty and everything like that, and turns around and walks away, and that catches the attention of Kumanga, the spider. And thus, you know, we get the final fight. And in the meantime, they're also creating tension, because the top of the cave could collapse at any time because of the fight going on top of them. But you've got the two main professors, and they're desperately trying to control everything, to control the experiment, so that it'll snow, giving them a chance to escape. It's it's right up there in terms of it's like the epitome of what Sekizawa wanted to do with his scripts. They were so intertwined, our human story and our monster story, without them feeling like two separate entities, which is what we'd got earlier with this inversion. Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster, a lot of people have complained, and I really do understand this complaint, that it felt like two very different stories going on. You had your monster story, and you have your monster story, and then you also have your human story, and they feel like they're two separate films almost. You even have that a bit in Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. Even look at the ending of Mothra vs. Godzilla, made just before Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster. Same year, but a few months before. In that film, you have our heroes, our three protagonists, going out there to save the children, while Godzilla and the two Mothra larvae duke it out. That's the climax of the film. Again, those feel like very two separate entities. By 1967, as I just explained, in Son of Godzilla, that was no longer a problem for Shinichi Sekizawa. And it's sort of this I really wish there was more out there about this man. Maybe I would love to be the person to go out there and try to do this, in all seriousness, because Shinichi Sekizawa, I would love to see myself do. I know. I know, Justin, you don't have to actually me. It was released a few months. I know. I'm talking about Godzilla, not Dogora. But lost my train of thought again. Something about Shinichi Sekizawa. Oh yeah, I would love to somehow get more information on him. Really bring him out in the public eye, because other than the promo presses for Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster, he's never really been singled out for his important work in the genre. And the more I read about him and the more I look at his movies and the more I learn about Eiji Tsuburaya's mentality during this time period between 64 and specifically 74, when he's going out there, starting to set up his own production company and so on and so forth, the more I realize that David Callett was right with his audio commentary for Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster. And David Callett's whole thing is that it was really Shinichi Sekizawa who was pulling the card on this. And I truly and firmly agree with that now, because it was Shinichi Sekizawa's whole idea that these movies should be fun, that these movies should not get bogged down in the details that much, and that they should just be entertainment, and entertainment as their number one purpose. It was Shinichi Sekizawa who had the clever idea of really inverting the genre. Something which, by the way, Takashi Kimura, the other writer, would copy. Though Takashi Kimura was interesting. Takashi Kimura's mentality was more of, oh, nobody watches these movies for the human characters, so I'm just going to make the monsters have all the character. That was more of his mentality. Shinichi Sekizawa was more about inverting the genre. And, of course, Eiji Tsuburaya loved this. Because, and I'm not quite sure if that was more of Eiji Tsuburaya's personality saying that he loved that, or if he just saw the writing on the wall. Because I'll give Eiji Tsuburaya this, and a lot of people think I poo-poo on him a lot. I don't. I think he was an extremely smart businessman, as well as, a visionary in terms of visual effects. But I think he saw the writing on the wall and was realizing that these movies were getting geared more and more and more and more for children, especially with or their audience was primarily children, especially with the success of Mothra, made in 1961. That film not only gave rise to Shinichi Sekizawa and really began his whole writing style, but that also was the film that really pigeonholed Honda. And I'm not the one that's saying that. That's like Steve Reifel, and David Callett does a bit too. But because of Mothra's success, Ishiro Honda wound up being pigeonholed into just making these giant monster films and so on and so forth. And so yeah, that's all it for good and for bad. And who was the one that was really coming up with that? That was Shinichi Sekizawa. Even on, he wrote episodes for Ultraman. I think he wrote a couple episodes for Ultra Q. I know he worked on Ultraman, a couple episodes of Ultraman. And those films, by the way, or those series often revolved around that same mentality, that the humans have a problem and the monsters resolve it. Not all. Like early Ultraman, I never really liked early Ultraman, but they had sort of your more generic giant monster of the week, because that's literally what it was. As the show went along and as the series went along, especially when we get to like Ultraman Jack, they really started inverting that genre, going back to the Shinichi Sekizawa doctrine. I'll call it the Sekizawa doctrine from now on. Maybe that'll catch, maybe it won't, I doubt it. But yeah, whatever. Akira Kurosawa. In my opinion, he is an overrated director, even though I don't just like, I adore certain parts of his filmography. Seven Samurai is a goddamn masterpiece. That's such a good film. Yojimbo is amazing. I think my favorite film of his is either High and Low or Dersu Uzala. And Dersu Uzala is a film that a lot of people don't know about, but that's that Russian-Japanese co-production. And I really like that film mainly because I'm kind of a nature nut. I love widescreen shots of nature. And that film is just chock full of it. Yeah, I also kind of like the story of, these two friends becoming very brotherly towards each other. But the reason why I kind of shy away from Kurosawa is mainly because his cinematography drives me crazy, because he loves telephoto. He loves it when everything is in focus, which is fine. I think that kind of style works really well for a film like High and Low, where everything needs to be in focus because there's so much shit going on within the frame itself. However, I watched some of his other works, and I'm just kind of like, that doesn't need to be all in focus. I had that with The Bad Sleep Well, which, by the way, the director of photography of The Bad Sleep Well also shot Godzilla vs. Megalon to show you how well that man's career worked out. Also, Akira Kurosawa was kind of a jerk. There's no denying that. He loved to have meltdowns on set and everything like that. Tried to kill himself because his career wasn't going the way how he wanted it to go. Which, by the way, Shiro Honda was partially the man who saved him. And yeah, he was kind of a mess. Certainly a film director that I respect to no end, though, because of what he sort of led to. And for example, he led to the Dollars trilogy. Because of A Fistful of Dollars being a remake, basically, of Yojimbo. We wouldn't have had Clint Eastwood, and I fucking love Clint Eastwood. I love the Dollars trilogy in general. It's some of my favorite westerns out there. And kind of funny how they kind of, samurai films and westerns kind of come hand in hand often. But I really... High and Low is just such a good film. It really is. That's a absolutely epic film. But a lot of people go after him in terms of his visuals, and I'm like, no, you want to go after, a Japanese director in terms of their visuals that made films of sort of the same caliber as Akira Kurosawa. Look at Masaaki Kobayashi. That man's cinematography is, in my opinion, more beautiful than the stuff that, we'd get out of Stanley Kubrick. In fact, I would say they're quite similar. They both like their dolly shots, just in a different way. While Masaaki Kobayashi really like pushing in or pulling out on something, really slow pull-ins or pull-outs, subtle camera movements like that. Stanley Kubrick liked to have his tracking shots with his dolly. But both of them used a dolly very, very, very well. And I'm not talking about, like, the pull-in and pull-outs of, like, Ishiro Honda. Ishiro Honda really likes to push in on something important or reveal what's important as the camera pulls out. No, Masaaki Kobayashi did this very creeping motion that just draws your attention to whatever he wants you to focus on. And also, Masaaki Kobayashi liked playing with depth of field. Look at the opening fucking shot to Samurai Rebellion, which in my opinion is his best film. But it starts off with an extreme focus on the samurai sword. It then racks to Toshiro Mifune, and it makes it look like the sword splits apart. And I'm like, you'd never have that in a Akira Kurosawa film. You would never have that, just because of their different styles. Another director I like to point out that I think is underrated, and I think more people should check out, is Seijun Suzuki. Seijun Suzuki has influenced me so much. Even though I don't like to go as crazy with lighting as Seijun Suzuki does, I do like now playing with lighting. And his, in terms of how he influences me, is more on the fact that, like, he only had a month to both pre-produce, produce, and then 3 days of post-production for each one of the films that he made. And as an independent filmmaker, that is some of the shit that I have to experience. So I really like that, and it's sort of researching Seijun Suzuki. It certainly has taught me how to play with that kind of stuff, how to time manage a lot more. You learn by reading, you learn by reading and doing. Those are the two things I say. I have not seen Richard Jewell yet, Justin. I have not seen it. That is something that I do want to see. I find it funny how he said Gran Torino was going to be his last film like 20 films ago. I do want to see the one on Richard Jewell. I do. Yeah, Justin, Akira Kurosawa films can be a chore to sit through. Oh, Ran. Ran is another one that I highly enjoy, even though there's several shots on that where I'm like, did that really need to be telephoto? I mean, that's just something he liked. Again, that's just what Akira Kurosawa liked. He loved his deep depth of field. Which, a part of me does too, but I tend to do it... I like doing it in sort of the Robert Wise kind of way, where Robert Wise liked using what was called the split focus diopter, which is a piece of glass that goes in front of your lens that allows you to get two focal points at once. One being like a close-up and one being something a little bit farther away. You look at his film like the Andromeda Strain, Star Trek: The Motion Picture, or even the Hindenburg, they are chock full of those kind of shots, and I just adore them. In fact, I would say that split focus diopter shots, my production crew can attest to this, they are my favorite types of shots of all time. If you want to see what they look like, you can actually watch my short film Pineapple, which we used it extensively in that. Well, I think Okamoto had the benefit of having more time and money being put into his films. Okamoto's films are a little more polished than, say, Jun Suzuki, especially his earlier works. But something that I love about Kaihachi Okamoto is his cutting. And if you watch Shin Godzilla, you can kind of get a flavor of what the style of Okamoto was, because Hideaki Anno has said many times that Okamoto was his favorite director of all time, his number one inspiration, and everything like that. And I certainly understand why. I love Kaihachi Okamoto. I still hold him like up here in terms of like the best directors of all time, regardless. But yeah, Okamoto would watch Japan's Longest Day. If you guys can get your hands on a copy, subtitled, of Japan's Longest Day, yeah. I remember it was his picture. I remember sitting in the theater too, recognizing that, and I really liked that. That was a nice little homage to him, I think, as well. But if you watch Japan's Longest Day to me is Okamoto's most Okamoto film. It's the cinematography is very, very sharp. When the camera moves, it's very precise. And oftentimes the camera does not move at all, other than maybe a slight reframing here or there. It's mainly him relying on cuts. One of them being Jun Tazaki's character has malaria in that film. And, he's shaking, and he knocks over the fan. Instead of the camera panning to the fan hitting the floor, it just cuts to a shot of the fan hitting the floor. It's very precise cutting. Something that I've studied tremendously and have yet to conquer. Have yet to even begin to scratch the surface of being able to do that properly. As much as I try. I tried that with FM 132.9, and in my opinion, I failed. Yeah, so far, my style of cinematography, and Jim Frasca can probably attest to this. I'm far more, especially lately, about capturing the performance than I am about necessarily getting a good picture. And a lot of that comes from studying George Romero. George Romero did that a lot. George Romero famously talked about filmmaking as cover your ass filmmaking. And that's sort of the mentality that I have of recent. Because one of the big criticisms that I used to get a lot in terms of the films that I made is that I never had enough coverage. I relied too heavily on these long shots, and they get boring. And now, I think a lot of my crews say I've relied too much on coverage, that I have so much of it that I just don't need to use it. And a part of me it still goes, well, I'm glad I have it, because I can create this story the way how I truly want to create it. Can cut to what I want to cut to. And that's very much a George Romero mentality. You look at especially the Crazies, Martin, and Dawn of the Dead, and you will see that style a lot, where it's very loose, and the shots aren't necessarily pretty. The shots aren't necessarily something that you would go and say, "Ah, oh, that's a painting." Mizaki Kobayashi often would be like, "Ah, oh, every frame is a painting." I don't really like that mentality, but I understand it and can certainly respect it because I'm a fan of beautiful cinematography. You look at my films and you can see the influence that George Romero gave me, because I'm very much like, no, I don't care about if the shot looks pretty. I just care about, did I capture this moment on film? You know, the moment with the actor. Do you have a rough negative opinion of Steven Spielberg? I don't have either a negative nor a positive opinion of Steven Spielberg. Mainly because while a lot of people were growing up on his films, I was not. Other than Close Encounters. I really fucking love Close Encounters. I also love Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan. I think those two movies are utter masterpieces. I think Lincoln is an extremely boring movie. I think his film... Oh, Tom Hanks is in it, and he is defending somebody who's being accused of being a Russian spy. I forgot the name of it. I think that had the potential of being a really tense movie. He made it extremely boring. Warhorse, I found to be a snooze fest. But yeah. I have neither a negative nor a positive opinion of him, simply because I didn't... A lot of those movies that people grew up with, that love, like Indiana Jones, for example. I watched Indiana Jones, but I'll tell you what I mainly was watching. That was Godzilla. I was watching, these kaiju flicks. Both, Toho made and, not. Like the X from Outer Space, Yongguri, Gamera, Nakatsu with Gappa, Reptilicus. I was watching those movies. I was watching movies like Creature from the Black Lagoon. I was watching the classic, the classic Hammer films, the classic Universal horror films. And at the same time, I was also watching a lot of films like The Alamo. I was watching a lot of epics. I was watching a lot of those kind of films. Not so much Indiana Jones. I did have a phase where I liked those, and I certainly had a phase where I remember really loving Star Wars, the original trilogy, back when I had the 98 restorations on VHS. That was about it. Bridge of Spies. Okay, I thank you, Justin. I couldn't fucking remember if it was a Bridge of Spies or if that was the movie that came out that was about them trying to expose a spy. It was a British film. And that film is also based off of a book, which Alec Guinness played the original version of him. Gary Oldman plays him in the remake. Both are very solid films. Yes. In fact, I actually prefer the new one, even though I think the performances are better in the original show. I think the show is a little boring. It could have been cut by an episode. I think it's 7 episodes. I think that series was 7 episodes. It could have been cut down to 6, I think. But Ian Richardson plays the main villain in that film, and I adore the actor Ian Richardson. Ian Richardson played Sir Francis Urquhart or Urquhart? Urquhart. It was Urquhart. Sir Francis Urquhart in the British series House of Cards, and he does amazing. Like E.T., love Jaws, and like Jurassic Park. I think the first Jurassic Park is a masterpiece. I think E.T. is a very good film, and I think Jaws is certainly a masterpiece. Like them all. Huh. So let's talk about Godzilla vs. Kong for a little bit. Everyone has seen that picture of what looks like an aircraft carrier, and for some reason, Godzilla and Kong are fighting on top of an aircraft carrier. What? That the first bit of news that this smells like Rogue One syndrome all over it, because the fact that this movie keeps getting delayed and keeps getting pushed back and keeps getting delayed over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, I'm like, this is Rogue One. They're reshooting shit. They're putting it in there. It's going to be a giant mess when it comes out, and I am not going to give two fucking shits. Godzilla King of the Monsters was a fucking mess enough. And that didn't have anywhere near as many of these sort of problems. Because even after, the King of the Monsters was released, I remember those fucking Zooplasts were like, we're doing some reshoots. And for the record, reshoots are quite common. Peter Jackson does a lot of reshoots. Like, if you look at King Kong 05, which was released in theaters around this time, by the way. Happy anniversary to that film. You look at King Kong, a lot of scenes were reshot in that film, including the Andero scream scene. You actually watched the original teaser trailer for the film, or even the game. That was what was originally shot. That was supposed to be Kong roaring. They reshot it, and in my opinion, for the better, after watching that version of the film and saying, nah, we need to tie this together more. So reshoots have a lot of benefits. Reshoots are actually, in my opinion, somewhat of a good thing. It's a filmmaker sitting down watching their work and saying, this needs more. One of my favorite examples of reshoots benefiting the film drastically is The Fog, John Carpenter's The Fog. A lot of the scares and the horror of that film was not in there originally. The entire climax of the film, with the girl on the lighthouse, desperately trying to escape the fog, that was all reshot. And I'm like, that's such a heart-pounding scene, and the music is so creepy. And that's because John Carpenter and his editors sat down, watched the film, and said, this is missing something. And props to John Carpenter for being able to admit that. It takes a lot for a film director to sit down at their work and saying, and being able to say, hey, yeah, we need to work on this. So yeah, major props for that. Lord of the Rings had certainly reshoots to try to tie things up a little bit better. But it's when the reshoots completely change the notion of the film that I start really having a fucking problem with it. And that's Rogue One. Rogue One, I call it Rogue One syndrome, where they just completely changed what was originally intended to be the point of the film. Fan Four Stick, remember that? Not that Fan Four Stick was going to be a good movie anyways, I think, just because it's the fucking Fantastic Four. But goddamn, that studio, you just made it a mess. Suicide Squad? Justice League. Don't get me started on that. What's the point of having a director? And I've also heard that a lot of the big battle scenes for Marvel films and stuff like that are all prevised even before they have a director on board. What? So tell me, what is the point of having a director at that point? If you're just going to change their villain, their vision in post and with reshoots, what is the point of having a director? And that's Godzilla vs. Kong. I don't see the point of having a director anymore for big Hollywood movies, because visions are clearly taboo in Hollywood now. Because you look at Godzilla 2014, you look at Kong Skull Island, you look at Godzilla King of the Monsters, and anyone could have directed those, and I think they would have been relatively the same. Any person, including me, could have sat down in those seats and directed that film, and it would have looked, sounded, and basically have been the same film. Now let's flash back to the original Godzilla, where if Agent Tsuburaya hadn't have come on when he did, or had made his octopus movie that he wanted to make, if Tomoyuki Tanaka hadn't have flown over Hiroshima one day, if Ishiro Honda hadn't have gone off to war, hadn't experienced what he did, the entire film would have been different. If Hideaki Anno hadn't have been approached by Shinji Higuchi to work on Shin Godzilla with him, Shin Godzilla would not have been the masterpiece that it was. Because of Hideaki Anno's stamp on said film, which works very well. And anyone could have made these films. Anyone could have made these any movie that Hollywood is putting out on the big screen now. Really, anyone could have done it. Which, by the way, as much as I poo-pooed on Rian Johnson for The Last Jedi, I really wanted to see that new movie that he made, because the one with Daniel Craig. I really wanted to see that because that looked like a genuinely good film. Rian Johnson, give that man crap for what he did for The Last Jedi. At least he had a fucking vision. He knew what direction he wanted to take the movie in. I didn't really like the direction, but at least there was a vision behind it. You know? Don't even get me started on The Last Jedi. What a... goddamn Hollywood. Which, by the way, this goes into the conversation that was held on the previous live stream. The previous live stream, I was talking about how much I love I love streaming services, and especially the original content that's coming out in streaming service. In fact, after this live stream is done and into tomorrow, I'm going to be watching The Irishman, and that's Netflix original content. I can't wait to watch that. And because a lot of that shit seems to have a vision behind it. A lot of that stuff seems to be very niche. Seems to be very targeted for specific audiences, whether I'm in that audience or not. And I love that stuff. That's the kind of stuff that not only do I want to make, but that's the stuff that I want to support. Not these big, giant things in Hollywood. And another part of it, me, also says that these movies just need to take a step back. I am so fatigued with big, blue beams being shot up into the sky and everything like that, including Godzilla. The fact that a Godzilla film has a budget more than $120 million, I think is ridiculous. I don't think a Hollywood Godzilla film should be above $90 million. If the Japanese could make Shin Godzilla for the equivalent of 15 million US dollars, to me, there is no excuse. And have it look as good as it was. Which, again, a lot of that was due to their creativity. They had to be creative with how they shot Godzilla. And sure, you look at that final battle and it being in broad daylight, it certainly does have extremely clunky moments in it. I give the filmmakers props for being creative with how they're shooting. The mixture of miniature effects, miniature destruction with the CGI monster, and the integration of CGI with those miniature effects. That's all great shit. That's all phenomenal stuff. And again, a lot of that comes out of their poverty, which goes into Eiji Tsuburaya's own mentality when he was working on the original Godzilla. Their ingenuity came out of their poverty. And Hollywood doesn't have that anymore. It's just a giant, I'm going to puke money at the screen and make it big and full of CGI creatures. And that's... Remember Lord of the Rings? Remember when Lord of the Rings blew us away with those CGI stuff, or even Gladiator? How revolutionary that was? That was CGI done right, in my opinion. Where it was a tool. It wasn't a crutch, it was a tool. Yeah, stuff like that. And again, there were visions behind both of those movies. Not these. And I miss visions. I miss that kind of stuff. Well, the fact is that if Godzilla was on there alone, that aircraft carrier would be underwater. I don't care what these posts say on Toho Kaiju Union or any of these other things, all these other posts. If that aircraft carrier was underwater, I'm sorry, Godzilla alone would cause that carrier to sink because of how big and heavy he is. Which, by the way, that sort of stems back into the mentality that I have that Godzilla being, 400 feet tall is kind of ridiculous. I just can't buy that. Certainly in the anime one, I cannot buy that. At least that one has more of an excuse because it's more of a plant-based monster, kind of a mixture of Biollante and Hedorah, and that's their version of Godzilla. I can kind of buy it a little bit more. But I just have such a hard time wrapping my head around a giant lizard being 400 feet tall. I really do. And by the way, I have that with Shin Godzilla too. Shin Godzilla, I don't exclude. Personally, I think Godzilla should remain to be 164 feet tall, like he was in the original. Even in GMK, even in Godzilla 2000, and, Tokyo SOS and Mechagodzilla. That height worked perfectly fine, in my opinion. Worked perfectly fine. Also, you can get more detail out of your miniatures that way as well. That was actually one of the big problems that Koichi Kawakita was having as the special effects director in the Heisei series. Godzilla was so big, they had to put less and less details into the miniatures because he just kept getting bigger. And as a result, the miniature sets themselves don't look anywhere near as good or as detailed as what we would see, in the time of Tsuburaya. Look at War of the Gargantuas. I think the Gargantuas are like 100 feet tall. I don't think they're as tall as Godzilla. I think they were 50 meters, I think. Justin would know if you could tell me how tall the Gargantuas was. But you look at the miniatures on that, they're phenomenal. Look at the miniatures on Frankenstein Conquers the World. Those are as good, if not better, than anything we'd see in specifically the mid-90s and on Godzilla films. And that's because of the amount of detail that they could put into the miniatures because of the height of the suits. That is one of the limitations of suitmation in general, is that. I heard people say that maybe Godzilla and Kong climb onto the aircraft carrier. Maybe Kong was on the aircraft carrier and Godzilla climbs onto the aircraft. How? Just how? You know that aircraft carriers are made of iron, right? Now, I also had a theory, which could be... Yeah, again, that's shorter than Godzilla, Justin. That height. That is shorter than Godzilla. So they could put more detail into the miniatures. The water looks better. Which, by the way, water will always be the giveaway of miniature effects no matter what happens. But... the water looked more detailed. The ships, the ones that Gyra picks up and slams down, and Sonda then picks up again and slams down, that kind of stuff. More detail could be put into said miniatures. And thus they look absolutely phenomenal. But, I totally lost my train of thought again. That's been the theme of this live stream, is losing your train of thought. Martin, you actually nailed it on the head. They would simply collapse under their own weight. This is very true. My explanation for Godzilla, and in my series, I capitulated and made him 260 feet tall, 280 feet tall, somewhere in there. In hindsight, I wish I just kept him at 164, simply because the biggest thing with my Godzilla, and in the Godzilla saga, which, by the way, this is probably making me sound arrogant, like, my Godzilla is... No, it's just what I would do, because this is what I've been writing. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying this is what I've been doing. It's also what I like, and with my Godzilla, the biggest killer is not Godzilla himself. It's what he leaves behind, which is the radiation. Radiation is the biggest killer with Godzilla. And to me, something 164 feet tall could easily be that radioactive. Look at Chernobyl. The Chernobyl building really wasn't that big. And look at the amount of radiation that came out of that damn thing. Which, by the way, I am gonna plug it, but do watch HBO Chernobyl. That was by far the best thing I saw in 2019. Was Chernobyl, that miniseries. Phenomenal series, guys. Watch it. Excuse me. But one of the things, and if they ever brought this up, I would totally buy it. This would be the explanation that I'd want. One of the things that I do that say that, you know, Godzilla can support his own weight is, one, it is unlike anything we've ever experienced before. Godzilla in himself, and I've said this many times, specifically in the first book, Godzilla vs. Kong, or Godzilla and Kong, the first book of the Godzilla saga. Godzilla simply is unlike anything on the planet Earth. Unlike anything. Completely rewrites biology, completely rewrites history or the biology textbooks. And that's what I basically leave it at. And if the Monsterverse explained it as such, I would totally buy that as well. I would totally be able to buy... I don't really like the screen. I made it just in case, but going back to this one. I totally wrote it. You know, if they wrote with that mentality, I totally would have bought it. And be like, there you go. You just explained it. Just say it's unlike anything we know. This completely rewrites our biology textbooks. There's also a little bit more complicated shit within my series as well, where there's more than just Godzilla. You know, there's other... It's very clear that there are... Dinosaurs are still existing in some ways. Like, Rodan was a thing. Not, you know, the 1956 Rodan, but Rodan was a thing that attacked Beijing. Manda was found somewhere, I think, in the Congo. You know, there's monsters like that have been found throughout history. And in fact, they are somewhat of the explanation of the dragons and everything like that we see in China and Japan and in Europe, medieval Europe and everything like that. Even in Rome, we think we're these sort of dinosaurs. Godzilla just happens to be one of them. And there's something in Godzilla's DNA, something that it can just latch on to whatever it is that it comes in contact with and run with it. And I never go into too much detail of that because I don't think the story necessarily needed it. But that was one of the big things that comes out of the Godzilla saga, is the idea of getting your hands on Godzilla cells. Because they can basically create a whole new level of energy. Unlike anything we've had before. They can replace nuclear reactors, they could replace, you know, oil, you know, using of oil. They could power entire cities, Godzilla cells, and people want them. That's something that I really sort of tie into the Godzilla. And again, it goes back to unlike anything the world has ever seen before. Almost alien. Almost alien. I bet you we'll see something like that, Justin. You know, Godzilla and Kong sort of throwing stuff at each other, like in War of the Gargantuas. I bet you we'll see something like that. Adam Wingard, he was a Godzilla fan. I don't know how big of a kaiju fan he is. Which, by the way, I don't think you need to be a kaiju fan to make a Godzilla film. I don't. Just like I don't think you need to be a fan of Star Trek to make a good Star Trek film. Nicholas Meyer, the director of Star Trek 2 and 6, and the writer of 4, considered the 3 best Star Trek films, wasn't a Star Trek fan. He respected Star Trek, sure. Wasn't a big fan. And look what he did. Look what he did. And I don't think you need to be a big Godzilla fan to like those. Gareth Edwards, I think Godzilla 2014 is the most solid film out of them all. And I think Gareth Edwards made one hell of a movie. And though he's certainly a Godzilla fan, he's not a huge Godzilla fan. Like, I don't think Gareth Edwards goes out of his way to watch a Godzilla film, you know? Unlike us, you know, we go out of our way frequently to watch a Godzilla film. Because I do truly believe that you can be too much of a fan of something. You can be too much of a fan of something for that franchise's own good. And Godzilla could fall prey to that as well, you know? Too much fan service, you know? Fan service can be a killer. for something like this. And, we've seen that with Star Wars. Certainly have seen that with Star Wars. Which, by the way, that's part of the reason, that's part of what I really don't like about Rogue One. Even though Rogue One is my favorite of the Disney Star Wars films that have come out. Haven't seen The Mandalorian yet. We'll check that out eventually. But Rogue One had so much fan service, it almost gave me diabetes, and that's a big problem with it. And you know why? You know why a lot of that stuff is in there? One, because Disney wanted, but two, Gareth Edwards is a much bigger fan of Star Wars, and he's admitted as such, than he is of Godzilla. There you go. Just an example. Let's see. Leslie Chambers. Since the movie is celebrating the 30th anniversary. Godzilla vs. Biollante is a masterpiece. I used to think that movie was really complicated when I first watched it. I was quite a bit younger when I first watched it, and it was so complicated I had a hard time wrapping my head around that movie. And it is really funny that movie was a bomb. No, it wasn't a bomb. It made its money back, but that was about it. Like, it didn't do very well outside of that. It's really interesting because that film, I used to think this is too complicated for its own good, and now I look back at Biollante and I'm like, God damn, that movie's a masterpiece. I recently rewatched all of the Heisei films. Well, it wasn't recently. It was about midway through the year. I rewatched all of the Heisei Godzilla films because I hadn't seen a lot of them in years, and I'm talking since middle school. I hadn't seen a lot of them, and I rewatched them all, 84 to Destroya, and Biollante was amazing. And again, it sort of reinforced my idea that the Heisei series is my favorite of the series. Not visually, but certainly in terms of storytelling and character and even music in many cases. I think the Heisei series is a masterpiece. Biollante is an extraordinary film. And that was really... by the way, that is another great example of what I was just talking about earlier. Kazuo Omori, I think that's his name. I know his last name's Omori. Was not a Godzilla fan. He just wanted to direct the movie. And he made Biollante and King Ghidorah. He also wrote Destroya, which is hailed as one of the greatest Godzilla films ever made. In my opinion, the second best Godzilla movie ever made. And he wasn't a fan of Godzilla. He just respected it. Koichi Kawakita, of course he was a fan of Godzilla, because, by the way, you listen to the audio commentary on the out-of-print The Mysterians DVD, and Koichi Kawakita was one of the commentators. Listening to him fanboy over The Mysterians, which he calls his favorite film, by the way, is hysterical. But, like, he was a fanboy, and just the mixture of those two made Biollante so unique. It was a completely new and fresh take on Godzilla. Not just Godzilla himself, but as a sequel. Because if you look at 84, 84 has a lot of similar tones to the original film. It certainly is. It's just a modernized version of that. And Biollante took Godzilla, not just design-wise, but also thematically, also visually. I mean, look at the Biollante puppet. Outstanding stuff. But story-wise, character-wise, it took Godzilla in an entirely new direction, and a direction that the rest of the Heisei series would follow in one way, shape, or form. Which is funny, because that ultimately sort of became stale. That sort of new Heisei mentality sort of became stale by the time of 95, which is why I actually respect Shogo Tomiyama for saying, I'm going to pull the plug right now. Shogo Tomiyama, by the way, was the person who basically took over for Tomoyuki Tanaka, because by the 90s, Tomoyuki Tanaka was really, really old. And on top of that, not really healthy. The last movie that Tomoyuki Tanaka really had a personal stamp in was Biollante. Biollante was the last one that he really had a nice stamp on. And one of the things that Tomoyuki Tanaka, and this is interesting, by the way, one of the things that Tomoyuki Tanaka really wanted to do with Godzilla was make it international. And in fact, it was Kazuo Omori who, in an interview, said that he doesn't think that Tomoyuki Tanaka would have liked Shin Godzilla at all, because that was such a Japanese film. That movie spoke to the Japanese people. That movie was about Japanese politics. That movie was a satire and social commentary on the life of politics and reality in Japan. That Tomoyuki Tanaka did not want that. Tomoyuki Tanaka wanted something very international, something far more in line of the James Cameron action films. And we definitely got that with Biollante, Ghidorah, Destroya. That sort of mentality carried through with the rest of them. But speaking of, Kazuo Mori not being a Godzilla fan, Tomoyuki Tanaka, when they were making Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, he said he wanted King Ghidorah to be a monster from Venus. And Kazuo Mori said, I'm not fucking... almost quite literally said, I'm not fucking making a movie about a space monster. And shut Tomoyuki down. And Shogo Tomiyama, I'm not quite sure about the politics behind this, but Shogo Tomiyama sided with Kazuo Mori. And that's why King Ghidorah in that film is not from space. Kazuo Mori did not want to make a space monster movie. And that's why that is. And really, that was sort of the nail in the coffin for Tomoyuki Tanaka. That was like the last time that he ever tried to have his stamp on a film, and that was the result. They just ignored him. It's kind of like Gene Roddenberry with Star Trek. It's sort of, he gets promoted so much, and he was so old at some point that he just stopped having influence on the series. And Shogo Tomiyama, for good and for bad, was the one who took over. Which he's an interesting character. I want to learn more about him, because eventually I'll do a Godzilla Vlogs on him. Because I think from what I know, he's a very interesting person. And I think he's done a lot of good for the Godzilla series, but at the same time, he's also done a lot of bad. So he's somebody that I would like to check out. Thank you, Leslie. I'm glad you're watching. I'm glad you enjoy. Certainly been told that I have a unique perspective on a lot of this stuff, and that's fine. Whatever. Whatever. They're welcome. The most underrated Godzilla film? Oh, that's a good fucking question. I know I've answered this question before, and I think it's been different every time. I'd put Son of Godzilla on that list, because a lot of people spit vile at that film. Put Son of Godzilla on that. Yeah, I think it'd be Son of Godzilla, that being the most underrated. Or at least underappreciated. I think that movie's a masterpiece. And I don't think you were here, Leslie, when we were talking about Son of Godzilla, but I did a whole spiel. If you want to come back to this later, I did a whole spiel of why I always watch, Godzilla, Son of Godzilla around this time period. But the most overrated? See, I like them all. You see, that's just it. Even the bad Godzilla movies, I think, have watch value to them. I don't think there is a bad Godzilla movie. Just like I don't think there really is a terrible Star Trek film. There's just ones that are better, or in some cases significantly better than other ones. Most overrated is Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. I used to absolutely hail Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, and it's really funny. I used to hail Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, poo-poo all over Space Godzilla. It has since inverted. Since that recent reviewing of the series. I don't necessarily hail Space Godzilla, but I did an entire podcast on that one as well. But I certainly liked it more than Mechagodzilla 2. Because Mechagodzilla 2, in my opinion, suffers from having a very, very lackluster visual style. It has a very, very lackluster visual style. And that's too bad, because the story and the script itself that goes with Mechagodzilla 2 is astounding. It is astounding. The story, the characters, the presentation of it, even the acting within the film is outstanding. It's just that set design wise, visual wise, I just find that movie lacking in almost every aspect, which is too bad, because Takeo Okawara, I think, is a good director. You look at Destroya, I think Destroya looks really well. Godzilla 2000 certainly looks cool. Yeah. Which Martin, I agree with you. I think that the Heisei series has gotten shit on a lot, and I think it's just because that fan base that is Toho Kingdom has become very vocal recently. Not sure why. Actually, I think I do know why, and that's because of Ed Gazzetsky's and Steve Rifle's book on Ishiro Honda. And the fact that they have been defending Godzilla's Revenge a lot lately. I think that's what that sort of has steered this direction. But you know what? If they want to poo-poo on the Heisei series in general, that's fine. Let them. I still love it. I know a lot of people that still do love it. Again, I'll pimp out that Facebook group, the Heisei Godzilla series group. I really enjoy that group. Some great discussions I've had on there. Great, fun discussions on there. Which, by the way, one of them that I've had was about Takeo Okawara, my defense of him as a director. And I sort of was going after Koichi Kawakita a little bit because of his... Koichi Kawakita and Takeo Okawara did not get along very well. And I was taking Takeo Okawara's side. Well, Shogo Tomiyama took the more important person, clearly. Shogo Tomiyama did not take Takeo Okawara's side at all. He took Koichi Kawakita's. Godzilla vs. Hedorah. Yeah, you know what? I should have said that for most underrated. I think Godzilla vs. Hedorah is one of the most ambitious and goofy Godzilla films out there. It was my first Godzilla film, which explains a lot. And I also said this at the beginning of this chat, too, of this live stream. Godzilla vs. Hedorah is a film that I find the behind-the-scenes story almost more fascinating than the film itself, because I've just been doing so much research on the film and the people behind it, and it's just all compiled up. That would be something that I would do an audio commentary over, is Godzilla vs. Hedorah. I'd do a David Callett-style Godzilla vs. Hedorah audio commentary. Most overrated Destroy All Monsters. I love Destroy All Monsters. I think that film was a blast. But yeah, I actually get it. I think the story and the characters in that film are extremely, extremely weak. What saves that movie for me is that it's sort of the opposite of Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, where I thought the story and everything was great in Mechagodzilla 2, but the visuals were lacking utterly in almost every department. I thought the story was lacking in Destroy All Monsters, but the visuals were phenomenal. And the editing, the montage, the presentation of said weak story was phenomenal. And I still stand by that, by the way. I think Destroy All Monsters and Godzilla vs. Gigan, I've done a podcast on this as well. I think those two movies have the best cinematography out of all of the Godzilla films. That any series, any era. Showa, Heisei, Reiwa, Millennium, blah, 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 blah. Those two films look the best, and a lot of that came out of the creativity, especially in Godzilla vs. Gigan. I'm not exactly a big fan of that film in general. I mean, I do like it. I still really enjoy it. In fact, I actually enjoy the human character parts of that film the most, because I find the human characters in that film, again, that's a testament to Shinichi Sekizawa. But I just find the human characters in that much more enjoyable than I find the monster stuff. And it's so visually interesting to look at. The same as the Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, the original one. The amount of how they shot those sets and everything like that, and how the action is staged within a shot is phenomenal. And I really miss that style of cinematography, where the camera's locked down and what keeps your eye on the screen is what's moving within the frame, not so much the camera moving itself. And I'm not knocking camera movements, because look at Godzilla vs. Hedorah. There's some great shots during that monster fight where the camera's really in close, because I think that's part of the reason why I like some of the cinematography, especially for the monster stuff that's actually shot for that movie. That's not stock footage. Unlike any of those other films, including the stuff that Sadamasa Arikawa was the special effects director for, after Eiichi Tsuburaya sort of took a step back. The cinematography in Godzilla vs. Gigan was far more personal and close up than in any of the other Godzilla films made to that point. And the reason why was because, well, they didn't have the sets or the money that they wanted to make the movie as big as it was. They didn't want to use that Godzilla suit. The reason why they used that Godzilla suit, despite the fact it's falling apart, is because they didn't have the money to make a new suit. They put that into Gigan, and they basically tried to fix the face a little bit in the Ghidorah suit, and they had a recently made Anguirus suit from Destroy All Monsters. So they only had to really make the Gigan suit, because that's all they had for money. And because of that, they had to be very creative with their cinematography, and I think it worked to that film's benefit. And I think it was extremely outstanding. And the same kind of goes for Destroy All Monsters, except Destroy All Monsters 1 had a bigger budget than Godzilla vs. Gigan, but it was just a new cinematographer for that genre. This was the first one for that genre that was working. Usually Honda had a cinematographer that he used. I forgot his name off the top of my head. But this is the first one that this particular guy for Destroy All Monsters was working on. And I think that gave that particular film a bit of fresh air, a different look than the other films within the genre. I love Sea Monster. I think Sea Monster is a blast. Stuart Galbraith actually said this in his audio commentary for Godzilla vs. Megalon. He's like, I think Sea Monster is the one movie where you take all the monster stuff out of it and you still have a pretty fun film. I agree with that. I love the characters, the human characters in Sea Monster. I think they're more interesting than Godzilla. They're why I go back to watching that movie. And again, that's sort of indicative of both Jun Fukuda's directing style and Shinichi Sekizawa's writing style. They meshed very well. See, I really don't like that dub, Justin. I'm a huge fan of the AIP dub. Luckily, I was able to get my hands on the fan restoration of the AIP dub of Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster. I think that's far superior to the Frontier dub. The one where I think the Frontier dub is better than the AIP dub is actually Son of Godzilla. I think the AIP dub to Son of Godzilla is inferior to the Frontier dub, the Toho International dub, as they're also called. The IP dub to Godzilla vs. Hedorah is definitely better than the one by Frontier. And then the movies made after that they all had the international dub, essentially. Oh, AIP. I just think AIP is like the best dubbing company out there, or was. No, AIP was not the dubbing company. My apologies. Tetra-Titan were the best dub companies out there. They were both stationed in New York. And that's because they actually had actors doing the voices. Listen to the AIP dub to Destroy All Monsters. Seriously might help you enjoy the movie a little bit more. Another good dub company was, I believe, it was either called Glen Studios or Glen Studios. And they dubbed War of the Gargantuas, the version that was released here in the States by Henry G. Saperstein, and Godzilla vs. Monster Zero. And I think those dubs were extremely good. I find those dubs to not only be good, but the one for Godzilla vs. Monster Zero, I think the dub is actually better than the dub for or than the original language version. I think it just has more character. And you'd be hard-pressed for me to deny that for Monster vs. Godzilla and Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monsters. I find the dub for Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, which was done by Belushi Studios, I think, I find that dub to be really good too. It really brought out a lot of character and stuff that people might miss if they're listening to the original Japanese language version, simply because they're speaking a different language and we're not accustomed to hearing a different language. King Kong vs. Godzilla had a good dub. Yeah. It's really funny because the guy who does the voice of General Shinzo in King Kong vs. Godzilla, the man who voices him in the Universal cut of the film, plays the general in War of the Worlds. He plays the main general in War of the Worlds. So I really like that. King Kong Escapes has a great dub. I want to say that was AIP. Not AIP. Sorry. I want to say that was probably Titan Productions that did that. But Rankin Bass always had a good vocal team because they had Paul Frees. They always had a good sort of voiceover team. They always did. Because, their cartoons, their stop motion specials that were very popular at the time, they just had a dubbing team ready. So they were ready to go. They also had, this is key, a lot of the people that did the dubs for the Frontier versions, the international dubs, weren't actors. They were people like Ted Thompson, for example, wasn't an actor. He was a businessman. And he's an interesting character. By the way, you can see who a lot of these dub actors are in the Green Slime. A lot of them actually play in the Green Slime. Like Ted Thompson, he's in the Green Slime. You can see him. He's at the very beginning of the film. But these people, yeah, like Rankin Bass, Tetra, Titan, they all had actual voice actors and just regular stage actors in general doing the voices. Therefore, the voices came off better and stuff like that. Though I do have to admit, the Frontier dub for Godzilla vs. Gigan is really good. It is really good. It's a lot of fun. The one for Mechagodzilla and Terra Mechagodzilla is also quite fun. I think those dubs are quite fun, particularly the voices of the main villains. Clearly, it was the same guy in both of them. Clearly, could tell that man was just having the time of his life doing the voice in those. It's really funny because if you look at the early international dubs, so basically everything up until 1967, I really hate the international dubs, like detest them. Like the international dub to War of the Gargantuas, I cannot stand. I think it's so bad, especially compared to the one that Henry G. Saperstein put out. Better cliffhanger, Leslie. That's a good question too. I'm going to go with Godzilla vs. Destroya just because that sort of ties into the themes of that film. That, Godzilla will never die, that whole thing. And it sort of ties into the whole overarching theme of Godzilla. I'll go with that particular cliffhanger. That's not knocking the one from Revenge of Eris. The ending to Revenge of Eris is phenomenal. And both of them are cliffhangers, right? But I never got the sense of being let down by the fact that it's a cliffhanger, that we'll never get a true answer for it. Yeah, I know that there was the fan film Gamera 4, but that's not really canon. Because I do like them both, because both of them felt very satisfying, despite the fact that they are open-ended. It answered most of the questions that it actually answered all the questions that we had. It well rounded out their human story. It well rounded out the character of the main monster themselves. For example, I think Gamera's arc is complete by the end of that film, and I think Godzilla's arc was certainly complete by the time of Godzilla vs. Destroya. And that's all I really cared about. And because they were complete, I felt very satisfied with the fact that we didn't necessarily get the answers that we were otherwise looking for. Yeah. I'm going to take a little break. I just need a drink of water really quick, but I'm going to take a quick little break, and then we'll be right back. I'm looking to end the stream at around 11:15, so this won't take that long. So be right back, everybody.
Let's go. Right, here we go now. Batman scoop on the mic, mixing the mix on the wheels of steel. This is what I was fucking born to do. Let's go.
There, now I'm back. Wrong mic. I hit the wrong mic. I think my levels are okay. Let me know if the music is too loud, please. I can't really tell. The levels are being a little wonky with me. Have I seen any of the other Rankin Bass stuff? Yes, I have. Haven't seen the Return of the King one. Haven't seen The Hobbit, but I've heard a lot of good things about The Last Unicorn. The stuff that I mainly watched from Rankin Bass was there's stuff like The Last Dinosaur. I watched a lot of that. I also watched. I was really big into their stop motion stuff. Here Comes Peter Cottontail was one that, I would watch a lot, which actually, that's going to go into a question I'm going to propose to all of you, and I'm going to actually type it, make sure you guys see it. What are the holiday films that you guys always watch? You guys have to watch by the year. At the beginning of this live stream, I brought up, Son of Godzilla. Son of Godzilla was the film that I always fucking go to when watching, holiday films. But I'm curious about you guys. I always go to the Rankin Bass films. Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Those are the two that come to my mind immediately. I also love... Well, I love just about all of them. Hi, Godzilla Kiru. I love all of those. The only one of the Rankin Bass stop-motion movies that I don't like is Nestor the Long-Eared Donkey. And that's just because I think it's so goddamn depressing. That's why I'm not a big fan of it. But, like, The Little Drummer Boy, even the sequel, I like. Even The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, which I think, if I know correctly, that was the last of their stop-motion films, was The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. Which, in my opinion, had an astounding soundtrack, but it was a weird fucking short film. I mean, it was weird. I mean, it was basically the origins of Santa again, but done with a much more fantasy element, even more so than, Santa Claus is Coming to Town with Winter Warlock. Let's see. Leslie, what is your favorite badass kaiju tag team? Godzilla and Rodan, Gigan, King Ghidorah, Titanosaurus, and Mechagodzilla. My favorite badass tag team? See, I really love Godzilla, Rodan, and Mothra from Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. I just love that tag team. I just love the fact that Mothra totally pity trips Godzilla and Rodan to join the fight. I just love that so much. Mothra goes away, and you see Godzilla, and again, this is stuff that Shinichi Sekizawa was very good at. All of a sudden, Godzilla and Rodan just turn and watch him like, oh, fuck. She's really gonna do this. She's gonna die if we don't help her. And we can't do that. And that's what causes them to join the fight. And I'm not gonna lie, Godzilla and Anguirus is fun. Godzilla and Anguirus is fun, I think, just because of the dynamic between the two. The suit performances of Anguirus and Godzilla interacting with each other is amazing. I love that. I love how he's sort of their buddy. I like that, even more so than Godzilla and Rodan. It's actually one of the flaws I have with Invasion of Astro Monster, is they don't really play up the fact that Rodan and Godzilla have suddenly kind of become buddy. And it's because most of the film, they are in the hands of the Exilians. In fact, I would say that's one of the flaws of Invasion of Astro Monster, despite the fact that I love that movie, by the way. I almost dropped something. I heavily enjoy... I don't just enjoy it. I love Invasion of Astro Monster. But the monsters don't really get to do much because they are under the control of the aliens the entire film. So we get a couple of 4-minute fights, and that's really about it. The primary focus of Invasion of Astro Monsters is our human characters, which, by the way, they're what I come back to on that film. I think Glenn and Fuji are hysterical and work really well off together, and they're why I keep coming back to that film. How the Grinch Stole Christmas. That's a good one. One that I have not watched in a long time. Now, are you talking about the animated one, or are you talking about the one with Jim Carrey? Which, by the way, I enjoy the one with Jim Carrey. I'm not gonna lie, because I think Jim Carrey's performance, despite being in that ridiculous suit, is really good, and a testament to him. But I just really enjoy it. I think I think they go way too much into the consumerism aspect of it for no reason at all. But out of all those live-action Dr. Seuss movies that were coming out, remember those? Oh, dear God. That's probably my favorite one. Let's see. National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation is one that I know my father watches a lot. My father watches that a lot. I don't. A Christmas Story. I fucking love A Christmas Story. I know it's overplayed now, like There's No Tomorrow, but I really, really love A Christmas Story. It's just so relatable, that film. And you know what? I'm going to go out on a limb here. George C. Scott as Ebenezer Scrooge in that particular version of A Christmas Carol is a wonderful film. I love that particular rendition. I know it was really panned by critics when it came out, but I love that version of the film. Yeah, Rudolph. Have you seen Rudolph and Frosty's Christmas in July? The only theatrical film that the Rankin Bass made of those animated films. It's a weird movie, but Paul Frees does the voice of the villain, of course. And there are these ice dragons in it that just always freaked me out as a kid. And the same with this like weird, like winter cave entrance that was like a mouth and it would talk to the wizard and everything like that. He gets turned into a tree at the end of the film. Really weird. Big, colossal box office bomb, but that's beside the point. That's why they never made any theatrical movies, really, of that caliber after that. Baby New Year. The one with Baby New Year is really good, too. The one with Eon the Terror. He's why I like it. Eon the Terror always reminded me of Rodan. That's why I would watch it as a kid. Yeah, I figured you were talking about the animated one, but I just wanted to make sure, because I once assumed that with one of my friends, and it turned out that they were dumb, and they were talking about the Jim Carrey one. Did Chuck Jones animate that? Holy shit, I didn't know that. The only thing that I knew about that was that, one, it was based off a Dr. Seuss book, and then two, it was narrated by Boris Karloff. Those are the only two things that I really cared about. Okay, bye, Martin. Gremlins. That's such a fun movie. You know, I haven't seen the sequel in years. I remember not liking it. And that's another film that I'm curious to revisit, because I'm pretty sure, knowing what I do now, I would at least like the remake. Not the remake. Oh, which, by the way, they are doing that. The remake is confirmed. But I think I would enjoy the sequel a lot more, just because of all the freaking inside jokes. The inside jokes in... Because nobody wanted to make Gremlins 2. No one wanted to make that movie, and that's part of the theme of the film, is that nobody wants to do this. And I think that the amount of meta stuff that happens in Gremlins 2 that I've sort of been looking at lately is hysterical, and I would love to revisit that. Gonna take another swig. Yeah, a lot of people haven't seen Gremlins 2. The reason why I mentioned Gremlins 2 was because Red Letter Media just did a video on it, and I love Red Letter Media, despite the fact that I think they're too cynical and at times. They make me look like an optimist. But Red Letter Media, one, I just think they're funny. And two, I like how they've lately been giving shout-outs with their show Review. I think... they've been giving movies that otherwise I've never heard of, and otherwise no one really has heard of, a spotlight. And I really respect that and appreciate that. Even if one of them doesn't like the film at all that they're talking about, I really appreciate it. Like, they did that with Star Trek The Motion Picture. And they introduced to me, like, something that I totally missed, the whole sexual undertones to Star Trek The Motion Picture. And I'm not saying that to be silly or anything like that. There's genuine sexual undertones and everything like that within the film, and it actually made me appreciate the film in a whole new light. I really like Star Trek: The Motion Picture, particularly the director's cut. But they did Gremlins 2. They did an entire episode on Gremlins 2, and it had me laughing, not so much of what they're saying, but the clips that are being played. And I think a part of that is because Gremlins 2, from what I can tell, is very clearly a comedy. Right from the get-go, they were sort of making it a satire comedy. Well, if you look at the original Gremlins film, it was a horror film first, like a horror film first, then comedy. While the sequel, it's inverted. I mean, Gizmo in the second one is the most adorable thing ever. He's the most adorable thing in the first film too. So Gizmo's really cute. What's another Christmas movie I really like that I always check out? I always watch. Antonio, we should watch Gremlins 2 together. I just realized it was you that commented on that. Oh my god, I totally forgot about the lady flying out the window, Antonio. Oh, that was great. I die. I live for violence in film like that, especially towards old people. Oh, you like the Polar Express? Why? Everyone point at Justin and laugh. Why do you like the Polar Express? I love the book. I love that little book that it's based on. That's a classic. But the film? To me, there's just so much needless shit in it. That just didn't need to be there, you know? The Polar Express to me works best as a 20 to 40 minute short film. Yeah. Creepy Tom Hanks. Yeah, that animation style goes into it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did the same people that animated the Polar Express, did they also animate Happy Feet? Did they also animate Happy Feet? Somebody look that up. I'm genuinely curious. Actually, Antonio, since you're here, I'm curious, are there any like Christmas themed games out there, since that's your area of expertise? It's certainly not mine. Oh yeah, Justin, I know that you're a Train fan. I totally forgot about that, but I remember it now. You are a big Train fan. I used to be a big Train fan, by the way. I used to be. Ask my friends. I used to be obsessed with trains, but then I found space. Yeah, I figured there weren't many good Christmas-themed games out there. I just wanted to know, because you tend to be more of the indie game guy. Is there really? I didn't know that those were based for the... Oh, wow. Antonio, we should play them on your show. Actually, I was talking with Jenny on Friday. We were talking about making our own remake of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and who in our film group would play who. So it'd basically be the AAL version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town, and I so want to make this now. But yeah, we should totally play those. We should totally play those. I don't know if they could go up though because of your crazy schedule. I'm here in New York, Antonio, for one more week, and then I'm back to New Hampshire for a week. But well, it'll be an AAL Christmas special, not just an episode. It's like Lucas was young Kris Kringle, and then Brandon turns into old Kris Kringle. I was probably going to play Winter Warlock. Mark was going to play Burgermeister Meisterburger. Lucas was going to play young Kris Kringle. You were going to... No. Trepe was going to be Topper. And absolutely no one's understanding this right now, Antonio. I want to make that very clear. No one is understanding a word of what I am saying. It's just you and I. It's just you and I right now, Antonio. You can come on my face at any time, Antonio. But holiday season is why Ebenezer Splooge. You know, I've matured in some ways. I haven't in others, and this is one of them. I've sort of evolved from doing fart jokes every 5 minutes to making sex jokes every 5 minutes. Sorry, I'm sort of jamming out to the music I'm listening to. Adam Noyce Bukaki. Yes. Yeah. Well, when AAL comes out, you'll kind of see that, actually. They're both distributed by Warner Brothers, okay. Because both of them did the motion capture stuff. No! I think... Do you remember The Christmas Carol with Jim Carrey? That fucking forgotten mess? But that was done with the same exact style as the Polar Express, where for no reason at all, it was mocapped the entire film. And so none of the actors were really there. But Jim Carrey played Ebenezer Scrooge. Of course you like that film, Antonio. Actually, in all seriousness, I only watched half of it. So I can't be too hard on the film because I haven't seen it all. But I really didn't like it. Maybe that's because I'm biased because I played Ebenezer Scrooge in a play. And I just really like the story of A Christmas Carol a lot. Whatever. But I remember they made that. And do you remember the Beowulf movie was also done the same way? And that was bad. Angelina Jolie was in it. But the Beowulf movie and Polar Express were both by Robert Zemeckis. So yeah, it probably was the same people, essentially, that were animating both then. But I remember Beowulf. That was so weird. Like, that captivated me when I was first watching the trailers, and then I went to see it, and it was okay. It wasn't great. Granted, I'm not the biggest fan of the Beowulf story in general. I more respect it because it's one of the oldest stories that we have out there. But I like the story of Gilgamesh much more. Him and his gay romance with Enkidu. And no, I am not saying gibberish. Those are their actual names. But yeah, that was essentially that. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh no, I'm running out of things to talk about. I'm gonna, again, I want to end this stream at around 11:15, but... Well, that's you, Antonio. That's you. Of course you get excited over that. That's like me discovering how to make fire in Minecraft. You should have seen me, Antonio. You should have seen me. And whenever I play Civilization 3, the game that came out in 2001, alright, which, by the way, is still my favorite version of Civilization, I freak out every time I make a wonder. You should see how giddy I get every time I make a wonder, and how angry I get every time somebody else beats me to getting that wonder. Leslie, what is the toughest Godzilla opponent? Well, as a whole, the answer to go to is King Ghidorah. And I mean that genuinely, not just because Ghidorah is the popular answer. No, and I mean that genuinely. Ghidorah is a tough fucking monster. Every time Godzilla's fought King Ghidorah, it's been a really tough fight. Either Godzilla's not been alone, or Godzilla has almost died every time he's fought King Ghidorah. But if I was going to go with a sort of less generic answer, I'd seriously go with Destroya. Because Godzilla does not kill Destroya. It's the military stepped in that only allows Godzilla to kill Destroya. Also, the fact that Destroya was made from what killed the original Godzilla, I think just adds a whole other level of power and oomph to Destroya as, or that monster as an antagonist, and also having him kill Godzilla's son. Having Destroya doing all that shit. God, I love that film, Godzilla vs. Destroya. It's such a good film. Such a good film. That's one of those movies that, like, I, again, hadn't watched in a very, very, very long time. And, it was one of those great moments when you realize that, my God, that is as good as I remember it. As good as I remember that. I had that with Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, Star Trek III, The Search for Spock. I had that with Gettysburg. I had that with even King Kong 33. Because I didn't watch that movie forever. And I'm like, yeah, that is just as good as I remember it. And that's such a great feeling. that truly is such a great feeling. Cosmic Godzilla. Hold the phone. Has any of you out there seen or read of, not Space Godzilla, but a thing called A Space Godzilla? Have any of you heard about that? I got an email. Oh, that's okay. But, A Space Godzilla is the... Type it up. Type it up. That is the weirdest fucking idea I have heard for a Godzilla film ever. Certainly a new take on him, that's for sure, or her in this case. Godzilla is not even the right name. They're actually an intelligent species of alien. She's pregnant and also dying of diabetes, of all things. They shoot her out into outer space to fight an intelligent alien. Fucking weird. Like, the only thing that can kind of remotely... I should do a Godzilla vlogs on this. On A Space Godzilla. And also the one that was originally going to be a sequel to if not Raids Again, then the original, where it was like there's a big female robot that has to fight Godzilla in the Hollow Earth. Have you guys heard about that one too? Yeah, it is the most bizarre fucking story I have... Well, the idea... First off, the idea of A Space Godzilla is actually fascinating. Just not Godzilla, Like, I could see somebody making a giant monster movie of A Space Godzilla, just having it not being Godzilla. I could see that. That would be kind of interesting. It certainly would be new. Bono had nothing to do with that. Bono did a lot of drugs. Yoshimitsu Bono certainly did a lot of drugs. But no, Bono wasn't quite that crazy. He was crazy, but he wasn't quite that crazy. I don't know, because I know that the sequel to Godzilla vs. Hedorah that Bono wanted to make actually had... One, it took place in Africa, not Japan. But it also had something to do with AIDS. No, it didn't. That was later. There was an unmade Godzilla film that they were going to tackle AIDS. For some reason, they said, you know what Godzilla hasn't tackled yet? AIDS. I'm not quite sure what was going to be the thing with Godzilla vs. Hedorah 2. Because if you really look at it, Hedorah opens a whole new door for monsters, simply because Hedorah is not a single monster, really. Hedorah is an amalgamation of millions of tinier, like, tadpole-sized monsters. So that's what's interesting, and that's something why I think Hedorah would actually benefit from being a CGI monster rather than a man in a suit. Hi, A. Welcome to the stream. It's almost over, but welcome to the stream. Yeah, I know that there's pictures, because I think A Space Godzilla was a manga. Or they turned it into a manga. It's kind of like the glowing fairies of Mothra. Are you guys aware of that? The glowing fairies and Mothra, which was what was the original story before Shinichi Sekizawa got his hands on the story of Mothra. The glowing fairies and Mothra. That's something that. Well, I won't go into it too much because I'll say that there's a Godzilla Vlogs that's going to be coming out about it, or not Godzilla Vlogs, an episode of Thoughts with Adam that'll be coming out soon, going over that, as well as the multiple endings to Mothra. Did you guys know that they shot 2 endings to it? They shot 2 Mothra has 2 endings, yeah, and they shot both of them, according to Steve Rifle. They shot both of them. Yeah, Hedora alone could have started its whole different universe with the ideas that you could run off with it. But, Toho being Toho, they didn't. And, well, specifically, Tomoyuki Tanaka being Tomoyuki Tanaka, they didn't. But yeah, that was one of the things that I actually brought up in an episode of Godzilla Vlogs, was how happy I was that they weren't making a sequel to Shin Godzilla. That ending to Shin Godzilla with all the humanoids coming out of Godzilla's tail just opens the door to so many different possibilities, so many different ideas of things that could have been done for sequels. And I'm glad that they aren't making any sequels, because I've said this once, and I'll say this again. Shin Godzilla was just a happy accident. It was one of those cases where everything just happened to click at the right minute, the right time, the right people, and thus the film benefited tremendously from that. And anything that would have been made as a sequel to Shin Godzilla simply would not have been as good, no matter how hard they tried. It just would not have been able to top Shin Godzilla. The same with the original Godzilla, by the way. That's another example where that everything just happened to click with the original Godzilla, where anything that they made after that, anything that they tried to make after the original Godzilla, just would not be as good. And that's not saying that, nothing ever holds up compared to that. No, you've heard me praise the other Godzilla movies in this live stream alone. It's just, if you really look at them, none of them are as good as the original film, in my humble opinion. Yeah, I'm hard-pressed to say that Shin Godzilla, if it's not my second favorite Godzilla film, it's definitely my third. Because I really do love Destroya. I really do. I would say, objectively, Shin Godzilla is actually a superior movie to Godzilla vs. Destroya. But just Godzilla vs. Destroya has so many feels, for lack of a better term. It's like, if you watch Godzilla vs. Destroya, and not just because Godzilla dies at the end of that film, it's just the emotional powerhouse with the monsters as characters, and the whole rounding out of, bringing Dr. Serizawa's the dichotomy of his character back as a theme within that film. It's just such a good round out of a Godzilla series in general. It was just perfect in terms of that. And while Shin Godzilla is certainly a much smarter film, I would say a much better made and looking film than Godzilla vs. Destroya. What Shin Godzilla lacks, and again, Shin Godzilla was not trying to be this kind of movie. This all comes down to personal preference. Shin Godzilla is not supposed to be an emotional powerhouse. It's supposed to be a film dissecting Japanese politics, dissecting the political aura of Japan in both a satirical way and also, in a way of a giant monster, which is very clever. That's not what Godzilla vs. Destroya is. Godzilla vs. Destroya, in particular, is supposed to be a character-driven story, particularly with the monster. You see, they weren't taking the Shinichi Sekizawa approach with Godzilla vs. Destroya. They were much more doing the Takashi Kimura thing, which was, no one really cares about the human characters as much as they care about the giant monsters, which Godzilla vs. Destroya certainly does have good human characters. Look, it rounds out Miki Sagusa's character phenomenally. And I love how they tie Dr. Yamane into the whole thing. His grandson, his adopted grandson by some ways and stuff like that. Shinkichi, I think he was the son of Shinkichi from, I think his name is Shinkichi from the original film. I really like that. And yeah, I think that was all of that stuff is just great shit. But no one can deny that the true powerhouse of Godzilla vs. Destroyer are the monsters. Godzilla and Godzilla Jr. in particular. They are the emotional powerhouse. They are the thing that ties that entire movie together in a nice, neat little bow. And I love everything about that. Sorry, I just got a message on Facebook. Whoa. Sorry, had to answer that. But, yeah. Two very different, to wrap up my opinion on that, they're just two very different films. Both succeeding phenomenally at what they were trying to accomplish. Two very different films. It just all comes down to taste. And quite frankly, in my opinion, those two movies flip back and forth between who takes the number 2 spot and who takes the number 3 spot. They flip all the time. Oh yeah, and again, that all ties into Serizawa. That all ties back into one of the themes of the original Godzilla. Serizawa fucking kills himself because the Oxygen Destroyer is a weapon that could, in the wrong hands, be something far worse than the atomic bomb. And that all ties back into that, and I love that stuff. I love that. I'm a huge fan of continuity, in case you haven't noticed, and I love the amount of continuity within that film alone. King of the Monsters? Oh, God. Godzilla King of the Monsters is such a... Not the one with Raymond Burr, the one that just came out. It's such a mess. Like, I'm seriously afraid to watch it again because, I thought I finally wrapped my head around my opinion of that film with that podcast I did with Eric Casey, which you guys can go listen to. It's actually, I'm really happy with that podcast. It's a lot of fun. But, I'm so afraid to watch it again because the more I read about it, I listened to the audiobook of the film, the book adaptation of the film. Wasn't a fan. I think it was very poorly written. I'm one to talk. And, I mean, I liked it better than the movie, but I didn't like it as much as the movie. I liked it better than the movie, but that's not saying much. It's just such a fucking mess. It's such a mess. Welcome back, Martin. We're talking about... I'm making fun of Justin, considering the fact that he likes King of the Monsters so much. I did not like... It was okay. It was okay. I wouldn't go out of my way to watch King of the Monsters again. I would go out of my way to watch 2014 again. Even though I think 2014 is a mess of a movie. I think the first act of 2014 is just phenomenal. I think the entire film of King of the Monsters is a mess. And you know what movie I actually want to watch again? Just because I haven't seen it since I saw it in theaters and did that live stream on it. Kong Skull Island. I am willing to revisit that movie with a perfectly clear slate. Clear perspective. But I don't know if you guys remember my 3-hour rant on that film. But I don't... I'll tell you this. I think that if I watched Kong Skull Island again, I would like it more. I maybe not love it, but I certainly would like it more than what I did on that live stream. Listening to myself on that live stream, just tear that movie a new one, is kind of hysterical. And it kind of shows you how my mentality has changed since then, too. Especially since I've embraced... going back to what started this live stream, the whole Shinichi Sekizawa thing. That whole mentality on that. Learning about him as a writer and his writing style and everything like that really has shaped how I look at films, how I approach films, how I write them. And again, that's why I think Shinichi Sekizawa needs to get more recognition than he has. Stuff really needs to be... something academic really needs to be done about Shinichi Sekizawa. I mean, the fact that we don't even really know his birthday, I mean, we kind of do, but we can't confirm it, is sad to me. It is really sad to me. I'm sorry, what would be a good refresher for Godzilla vs. Kong 2022? Oh, rewatching Kong Skull Island, yeah. I'm actually probably going to watch all 4 films. I'm gonna watch 2014 Kong Skull Island, King of the Monsters, and then probably go see Godzilla vs. Kong. Even though this series is so not complex that I think I could just jump into it. Because let's be honest, the writing in these films are very simple, and very Hollywood, very safe. There's nothing really complex to it. If I say what you want about the anime series, but if I just jumped into the second one, because I haven't seen the third one yet, but if I just jumped into the second one without seeing the first one, I would have been so fucking confused. And there are serious goods and bads about making a series like that. It's like jumping into the Lord of the Rings without having the Two Towers, without having seen the Fellowship of the Ring. You're kind of like, what the fuck? There are pros and cons to making a series like that. The pros being you're really invested in the story. The cons being you might be limiting your audience as a result. You know, if a person who hasn't seen perhaps the first one of the film but wants to watch the second one or the third one, even whatever number it happens to be on, they might not like it as much simply because they're confused. They don't understand what's going on because they missed the first one. Stuff like that. Well, that's gonna just about wrap it up. Well, we also don't know anything, Justin, about the kid that played, you know, the kid in Hedorah and Megalon. He just disappeared off the face of the planet, and Toho's not talking. Stuart Galbraith has been, like, going nuts over this. He wants to interview the kid, and he's just, like, disappeared. Or at least in terms of that audio commentary. Not sure if anyone has found him since then. But whatever. So, anyways, that's really going to wrap it up here, guys. Thank you all for joining me, despite Kaiju Noir doing something with Mexican Santa. And thanks for sticking around. Again, I'm going to try to do these the first Saturday of every month. One of these sort of live streams. It would make a great creepy. Yeah, it would have. It would. I'm a fan of creepypastas, by the way. I'm kind of a fan of those. But anyways, everyone, thank you so much for joining. We've got more podcasts coming out, more episodes of Fat Man and Little Boy. But also that new web series. We're just so close to being done. Now we're just waiting on my fat ass to finish some stuff. It's a lot of sound design at this time now, in terms of that. Well, those will be coming out. And those are just skits. Those are skit shows more than anything else. But it's those are fun. Well, I'll say that. Those will be fun. Oh yeah, having a period piece Godzilla movie, I'm all down for that. Save that for later. We'll definitely talk about that in a later stream. That would definitely be cool. But anyways, guys, thank you all for joining. I'm gonna wrap up this live stream right now. And thank you all for joining me. And Merry Christmas, everybody. I hope everyone genuinely has a very Merry Christmas or Happy Hanukkah, whatever the fuck it is you guys celebrate. And a Happy New Year as well. Generally, from the bottom of my heart, wish that to all of you. I love this season. 'Tis the season to be fucking jolly, and I am certainly feeling it.